right. Well, good evening, Soulfire. Good evening, Thomas. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing all right. Had a good, beautiful day outside today, so
Awesome.
It's been good.
Good spring day for you?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, tonight we are talking about dreams and alchemy with Thomas Mooneagle. And Thomas, I know that you've been on here several times. We've had many wonderful conversations with you, but for those that may be new to you and new to your work, if you wouldn't mind just taking a second and just telling them a little bit about you and the amazing stuff that you do.
Sure. I'm a shamanic practitioner, so I work a lot with helping clients overcome challenges, remove, sort of false ideas about themselves so that they can reclaim their spirit and be made whole again. I also do readings. I also teach Tai Chi. I've had to move that online this year, so I've been experimenting with live streaming workouts, recording instructional videos. I've also written a book and put out a meditation album. So I do a little bit of everything.
Been busy.
Yeah.
Extremely busy.
To be fair, the book and the album was already out before this last year. So
nice. So that's a lot that you're putting out to the world. That's awesome. And as we're going through the conversation, a couple of things. First of all, if you're interested in learning more about the kind of work that Thomas does, if you are interested in connecting with him, all of his contact information should be in the description for this video. So you have all of that there. Also, as all of our Zoom, our lives are here on Soulfire. We are here free of charge, but obviously graciously accept donations. So all of our donation links are in the description as well. And then last but not least, if you guys have questions, comments, we're going to be talking about dreams tonight. So if you have dreams that you would like to share, get a little feedback on, definitely feel free and put those in the comments. We very much look forward to that. All right. So with that, I guess here we go. Dreams and alchemy.
Yeah, it's not always a straightforward relationship, but it does happen. And I should probably preface by saying, I've been interested in dreams since I was a child, and it was the first sort of step into investigating metaphysical ideas. I read a book on lucid dreaming when I was like 12 or 13. I started writing down my dreams in a notebook. Mm-hmm. And I continued to write down my dreams to this day. I don't get every single night, but I go through runs of time where I am very like every night writing something down. And then there'll be periods where I'm not that tuned in, but I do try to do that. And going back, I've gone back recently and I have read back, through old dreams and dream journals, and I'm shocked really about how aware I was about what was going on before it happened, or it wasn't so much, it's not always a predictive thing, although I will say when I was in school, I would sometimes dream up the test questions for the essays. Mm-hmm. And study for those.
That's cool.
Helpful. Whatever I'd be really focused on is going to show up on my dreams. Mm-hmm. And so I also have to be careful like what I'm watching before I go to bed because I don't want that to be playing, depending on what it is, it may play over in my head and come out another way. It doesn't necessarily mean that like there's a deep inner meaning there. It just, your mind is still running with the last thing you saw and is kind of replaying it in your head. So I always think, there are dreams that are just sort of processing the day. There are dreams that are, reaching out. There are dreams that is really more showing what's going on in your subconscious. Some deeper issues may come up, some deeper emotional things, or, old traumas may surface in dreams as well, or telling you kind of what's going on behind the scenes right now. I had a lot more of those than what I call predictive dreams. So they're sort of like telling me what's going on, but what's going on beyond what I know, maybe what some other people are doing or are acting in my environment. It's, you know, going on at the same time. So it's not predictive. It's just saying, hey, consciously aware of this, but this is kind of what's going on.
Right. Should
Um,
be a little bit more of the finer detail that your
right. You
higher
know,
self is picking up on, but your waking mind,
exactly.
yeah.
And and those are harder to sometimes real hard to apply because you have no like physical evidence of like this person's doing this or this, you know, this is going on behind here.
Right.
But you know, you can if you can step back for a little bit, you can just say, okay, you know, what's the pattern here? What's the energy here? Um, so the use of dreams for me is not necessarily just centered in predictive.
Hmm.
Uh, it's really about seeing what's going on, like what's going on with me,
Right.
what's going on in my inner world. And for me, you know, alchemy is all about, you know, working with what's there and transmuting it and hopefully, you know, healing it, making it whole, making it better, growing, you
Hmm.
know, again, not perfecting, but growing.
So it's really about using, you know, the more that we pay attention to our dreams and kind of lean into the deeper meaning, it will provide a portal through which we can do some deeper self-exploration and therefore
Mhm.
make some really important changes in our lives. I assume that's where the alchemy comes in.
It does. And the other thing that happens is we can have what I call a bleed over effect, where our dreams seem to echo into waking life, where we see, you know, something and then it appears in our waking world. And that's, you know, really important because we start to see, and I try not to get too much into this because people can take this idea and run with it way too far. But the idea that, you know, that the waking world is also kind of a shared dream.
Right. Right.
Um, and the reason, I mean, it is, but at the same time, I think people think that they can just do whatever they want in a dream with no consequences. Like, no, there are consequences
Right.
to actions and dreams. Uh, you know, because you can wake up and just feel just terrible or, you know, guilty. I was talking through a dream that I'd had with one of my shamanic teachers a few years ago, and I did something in the dream that I've never do in the waking world.
Hmm.
But she's like, you might want to go look and check into that and undo that. Um,
Interesting.
because yeah, I'm doing this with
You're just
energy and
blending that.
power and putting it out there, even if it's towards a dream character, it has an effect.
Mhm.
But you know, just this last week, I had a dream in which I was walking into a certain area that I haven't been to, and you know, there was something interesting. So when I went to walk the dog, I was like, you know, I'm going to walk down there. And I walked down there, walked down through this field, and I found this hidden path that I had no idea was there.
Mhm.
That took me back through this, you know, little creek and clearings. I got to see all these people had built landings at the end of their property, and I never knew any of this was there.
Right.
But it was sort of like this continuation of sort of like, okay, we're gonna, you know, interact with the dream, but in the waking world. And I think, you know, when you do that, you know, you open doors
Right. Right.
um, to, you know, interact with spirit. You know, it's sort of like I used to have a game where I would look in because I see the world kind of like a fractal in a sense that there's meanings that are hidden in various levels. And if you're open to that, things will pop into your awareness that you just see out in your normal waking world as well as in a dream. And then you can play with both sides of that too. You know, you can take something you saw in a dream and then work with it in the waking world.
That's very, very interesting. And I do want to, just for clarification purpose, when we're talking about dreams, we are specifically talking about just those dreams that we have when we're sleeping, right?
Yes.
Not daydreams or, you know, those types of.
Yeah. Daydreams is a different state of being. It's just more of kind of just a relaxed state and just sort of, you know, just zoning out a little bit. Dreams happen, you know, at a particular brainwave state. You've got the REM, you know, rapid eye movement going on. So there is a particular state that I'm talking about, and that is that state, you know, but I mean, there's just a big topic. But one of the things that I have done in the past, which was taught to me by one of my teachers, was to journey back into a dream, use a shamanic journey to go back into a dream and interact with your waking self with those symbols. And sometimes they're not symbols, they're actual beings.
Right, right. That's
I've
interesting.
actually gotten some very powerful guides by doing that. There's actually a group that I call on for protection, particularly, and for sending out for other people for protection, and that I first saw in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
It was like one of those big, what I call a big dream, where it was like, wow, it was vivid, it was wild, it had, talking wolves in it, and I was just like, okay, like this seems kind of important.
Right, yeah.
So I wanted to go back in and interact, and they're like, hey, we're such and such, and yeah, you can call on us. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I've literally called on those particular beings several times, and once they literally saved my life, So
all right, tell that story, because I'm very curious about that, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, I don't know when this was, but it's years ago. But so I don't, like I said, I've had these these particular spirits who I call the kumakuna. Well, that's what they told me when I went to the journey part, which were these talking wolves. And I'd sent them to people for protection before, and people will say, like, if they're particularly sensitive, they'll say, like, I saw the shadow of like this dog figure, or
Yeah.
One person I sent them to who was being harassed, they're like, these people can't get within like 3 feet of me. They were like, oh, like they back up, like. But for me, I had gone over and I had helped somebody who had a family member that, they had something I needed to take care of. That particular family member had a lot of spiritual disturbances. They had a lot of hitchhikers that were not keen to see me.
Mm-hmm.
And so before I left to go do that, because it was not something I wanted to go do, I took my little rattle off my altar and shake and called them to me. I was like, hey, just watch my back. Coming home, there was this car, and it was this white car, and it was coming down, and it was like aiming right at. I was like, then I saw that car. I was like, oh, that car's aiming. That car's meant for me.
Oh wow, yeah.
And sure enough, it was going to T-bone me. And 1 minute it was here, and then it was like on the other side of me without passing through me. I don't know how.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm really glad for that. But
that seems appropriate. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
So,
my goodness.
If I ever get really freaked out or someone's being threatened, I'm like, shh, shake that rattle, call them to me.
Right in.
But it doesn't always have to be that, a lot of times when you interact with dreams in an alchemical way, it's usually not the pleasant dreams, right?
Right.
It's going to be the ones that really trigger you, that really, like, you wake up and you're like, oh, am I awake? Is this real? The ones where you're
to forget, those kinds of
dreams?
they're
the ones where you turn the light on and you don't want to go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The ones that I've had ones that are just terrifying, and just like lock into that animal fear that, the next day I'm afraid to meditate even. Like, that's how, like, visceral some things can be, night terror kind of level. But in some of those, that's where you're going to find, ways to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Just an example, that one that like, I was afraid to meditate the next day, was I was in a parking garage sort of situation in that one, and all the lights just went out.
Yeah.
And it was complete pitch black, and there was this little gray I was trying to crawl through to get out, and I felt something in there with me, and I felt like it was going to, like, just literally rip me to shreds and tear me apart and eat me alive.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, I've never had like that kind of animal. I was like, I don't even have dreams that something's going to eat me.
Right.
And it was just so visceral, so. But I got out, I ran down the walkway, and what was interesting, and I didn't realize it until recently, because that dream has actually kicked off what's going to be like my second book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it was a big one.
Yeah, big one. But as I was walking out of that garage area, there was all these people. They're coming out to me and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you?" They're all like, "Here, let's get you someplace and sit you down." What really strikes me now, looking at that dream, is that yeah, there was that terrible like whatever that was.
Right.
But then, as soon as I got out of there, all these people came to help, and realizing that those were parts of me that were coming and had this there was all this compassion that was coming forward as soon as I got out of there.
Right.
And so, I mean, but again, I had to be a bit distant from that dream to like feel that. And I think a lot of times that's what happens is we have to get a little distance between our dreams, because sometimes it's so close we can't see it.
Absolutely. And I'm curious. So tell me a little bit about your process, because for me, especially, in the immediate moments after coming out of a dream like that, the thought of going back and trying to connect and spend time with it is a bit of a tough sell.
Right. And I think, I wasn't ready to do that the day after.
Right.
I waited a few days to go back into that dream, but I did journey back into that dream. I did take a shamanic journey back into that dream. I went in with my friends, those very protective energies, and journeyed back in and cleaned house, kind of went in. It's like, okay, there's something here and it should not be here. This is not me.
Right.
This just definitely did not feel like me. This wasn't. So took care of that and went back, and it was close to the winter solstice at the same time. So, I mean, I look at different things like what's going on, or what season of the year, and you may notice a change when we go right. When there's a seasonal transitions, your dream life may pick up around those areas, or you may notice, and this is the sort of thing that you have to kind of keep records for a while. You may notice that, hey, I tend to dream more vividly around the new moon, or I tend to dream vividly around the full moon, or the lunar cycle doesn't have anything to do with it. It's more seasonal, and that may be personal for a person. But I mean, I'm going to throw out some interesting little symbols to see, because I'm sure these are some things that a lot of other people dream about.
Mm-hmm.
And just to get them to start to think about them in a different way. And I don't know, other people, I often will have this dream where I'm trying to drive the car, but I'm not in the driver's seat.
Oh, interesting.
I'm trying to drive from the back seat, and I'm trying to reach over and get it, and like I'm freaking out because, I'm in the back seat and there's no one in front in the driver's seat. I had years of dreams like that. And then all of a sudden, one night I dreamt I'm in the driver's seat. I was lost. I couldn't find where I was going, but I was like, I woke up from that dream. It's like, well, I still didn't get where I wanted to go, but at least I was in the driver's seat this time.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And I think, that really, to me, sense like how little control I feel about things. It's like, I really don't feel like I'm in control of life a lot of times. And for me, that's kind of what that means for me. It's like, you're trying, but you don't have the things in front of you to take control, to take the wheel.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's one.
I had driving dreams a lot when I was a child. As a matter of fact, it's funny, I really love driving now, but when I was a kid, like the thought of having to learn how to drive for some reason terrified me. But so I would have a lot of dreams where it's kind of the opposite. It was like this scenario where everybody was dead and I had to drive. And it literally, that was one of those, especially as a kid growing up, that was one of those, waking up in a cold sweat kind of dreams. So again, but it does feel very much like a control thing, in my instance being, finding myself in a situation where I'm on my own and having to be in charge. Very much was a scary thing.
Yeah, it's, that I'm not in control. The other more amusing dreams that I have are flying dreams. which come and go. I might go for a long time, not have any flying dreams. And my degree of control of the flight, it varies from one dream to another.
Right.
Oddly enough, the more lucid I am, the more difficult I find it to actually fly.
That's interesting. Yeah. I would think it would be somewhat the opposite.
You'd think that, but it's like the more lucid I am, the hard, it seems like my mind sort of files away those things as like, oh, those are not possible things. Those are, things you do when you're
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like it is to, if you're consciously awake in a dream, my mind is interacting in a way that you would in the waking world and expecting that kind of thing. And so I haven't quite, I'm not one of those people that is really good at inducing lucidity. It just happens. And it's very hard for me to maintain it. But even if, I don't know, it's probably been more than a decade now, but I actually did manage to call up one of those, what you call magical powers in a dream, in a lucid dream once, where I drew circles, stepped through a door, and was someplace else. And I was just like, ha, I did it.
That's really
Normally I can do all sorts of things as long as I'm not aware that I'm dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that for me translates into my waking life. If I'm really trying to do something, particularly if it's particularly magical or whatever, the odds go down. If I'm not trying, the odds go up.
That's interesting. To me, that immediately brings in the whole, quantum physics thing, the double blind, the more our focus is on it, the less likely it is to.
Yeah, we fix it into one spot, and as opposed to we're like, no, I want what's going on over here. Well, the more you want that, the more you're fixated here. So it's sort of like you have to get a looseness. And I think, again, this control, again, if you think you're in control, we like to think that we're in control, but we're really not.
Right.
And, I have people come up to me and say, like, how did you know about that? How'd you do it? I was like, I didn't really. I just kind of did the thing, and I don't know if you saw the blog post that I wrote about the equinox and how that turned out. But that's the sort of an idea of like how the world can be kind of like a dream, and working on both sides. Because really, we're writing our dreams down. We're working on the side of the dream from the conscious realm. And then, training ourselves in our dreams is a little bit harder. It's really more of a reflection of where we are in ourselves and our spirit and our subconscious and how we've grown or not.
Right.
And so again, if dreams are nothing else, if you can't do anything but gauge kind of where you're at emotionally, they're still very useful.
Oh, absolutely. 1,000.
So,
yeah. And I would imagine that that's something that builds over time. So, if you don't have a lot of experience or familiarity, just being able to gauge where you are on an emotional level, well, then you can expound upon that and use that as a portal in to kind of get your sea legs and dive a little deeper.
Yeah. I mean, it really, one of the things that helps, people always want, oh, what does this dream mean? I'm like, well, sometimes it comes to me and I'm like, yeah, it probably means this. But really is to break things down and to simplify them symbolically, like simplify the action, what actually happened,
right.
In the simplest terms.
So as far as keeping a dream journal, what are some of the things that is it really important to write down every detail that you remember? Is it, are there certain key details that, or is it just really the big elements that seem important to be jotted down? What's your practice for that?
Sometimes I'm very like, I'll fill out a whole page or more if it's like just one of those dreams, right? Where I don't want to forget any of this.
Right.
But a lot of times it's just, a few lines. Sometimes it can be a single sentence. Or, because things fade quickly because they're, it's hard. It's called state dependent memory. So we're in a different mental state when we're dreaming than when we're awake. So it's harder for us to remember the actions of a dream when we're in a different mental state.
Yeah. I forget mine
So
immediately.
yeah, it's really easy. And, you know, if you don't write them down right away, it can be hard to recall them. I've had sometimes where I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot, because I went and I got breakfast, I sat down and watched something, and now I can't remember what that dream was. And I remember it was very clear as soon as I got up. And sometimes if I just sit and think with it, it'll come back, but sometimes it'll be like a word or thing, and then but sometimes if it's enough to give you the emotional sense of the dream, sometimes I'll just have 2 or 3 sentences, but I'll read that going back and I'm like, oh, I remember that dream. And then the rest of the details will fill in.
Right.
If you're having trouble remembering anything, then I would just say, right, I can't remember anything. This is how I feel right now when you wake up.
And that's a big thing because I always wind up left with that emotional aftertaste. That's when
yeah.
Even if I can't remember the details.
Yeah, and sometimes the emotional aftertaste really gives you how important that dream was. Because sometimes, again, you know, something that doesn't seem like a nightmare can really leave you feeling pretty down.
Right.
You know, somebody says something to you in your dream and it's somebody you love and respect, and it hits you in a certain way. You wake up with that feeling of just like utter devastation that you get from that sort of emotional confrontation. So that's showing you, hey, this is important. Hey, look at that relationship, or what that relationship symbolizes to you. And that's areas for you to grow and to heal.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm very curious because, you know, obviously not everybody watching is going to have shamanic journey experience. So I'm curious to sit with you and talk a little bit about, you know, how we can start this internal exploration, even though we may not have a shamanic journeying background.
Sure.
But I want to take a look really quickly. I've been watching every out of the corner of my vision, just things popping up. So we've got a couple of things here. We've got Sandra. Sandra's with us. She says, aloha, y'all, from Hawaii. She says, glorious, grooviest greetings, gorgeous ones. I love dreams. I rarely remember mine. What does that mean, if anything? I can sometimes have feelings when I wake up but can't remember a thing, and have even woken up and started crying and must have had a really sad dream, possibly. So she's talking about that same emotional aftertaste that we were just talking about. And then Carla says, lucid dreamer as long as I can remember. A little bit jealous of that. I remember them like memories, can recall hours after waking, deja vu, and sometimes exhausting because it feels like I'm living another life when I go to bed. And that's really interesting. And then she says, what about dreams within dreams?
Oh, yeah, I have sometimes. That's like where a dream within a dream, false wakings, or when you wake up into another level. Yeah, those are, I haven't had one of those in a while, but yeah, those are really interesting.
I've had that happen one time and it blew my mind because I literally was asleep in my dream and having another dream, and I'd never even contemplated that as even a possibility. It was such a wild experience when it happened.
What commonly will happen to me, particularly if I'm low on sleep, is I'll almost sort of kind of wake up, and then I'll dream that I wrote down the dream that I just had.
Oh, wow.
But then I wake up like for real later, and I've forgotten that dream that I wrote down in the dream.
Right.
That's happened multiple times because I thought I already did it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's, you know, I think, you know, when we get very mystical about it, which is cool. And I've been real sensitive. I'm sort of diving back into some of the mysticism now. We've been through a year of where we've had to be very focused on our physical safety, physical world, and the limitations therein. And so a lot of people will use certain metaphysical ideas as to think their way out of a crisis that really needs to be dealt with hands-on activity. So they'll spiritual bypass. And so, or they'll escape into mysticism, you know, which, you know, I've done it. And but at the same time, I think mysticism and the mystery of things really feeds into a deep human need that we have. And so for me, it's about balancing those two, like, wow, the universe is more mysterious and wonderful than we think.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, still got to do the laundry, still got to do, and balancing those things, not losing sight of either one. And it's really hard because usually you edge over into one and lose sight of the other, and it doesn't matter which side of those you're on.
Yeah.
Really hard to be like really balanced precariously between those two states, those two worlds. Dreams kind of do that for us every night, basically, where we go into a whole nother realm. And then we wake up. But like I said, the interesting thing is when you see that bleed over of things that happen in a dream and then they echo in your waking world. And then you start to wonder, well, like, what is the difference? And what happens if I take control in my dream, or if I start to induce a certain behavior in a dream, even if I'm not lucid? How does that affect my waking life?
Right. It's interesting to sit with that. And for somebody, like I said, I don't really remember my dreams that often. But I definitely remember that emotional aftertaste. I think that's a good place for me to start as far as notating, journaling down my dreams. And I'm very curious to know. So, and this is a question that popped up for me earlier when we were talking about journaling dreams. Do you keep a separate dream journal, right?
Yeah.
And so do you ever sit down and compare like your dream journal with your daily journal or whatever you might keep track of?
Yeah, I don't. I think the most regular thing I write is probably in my dream journal.
Yeah.
I don't keep I don't keep a daily journal. I occasionally blog or you do a live stream. So there's that. But I have a series of, here's just the latest one.
Ooh.
I thought that was appropriate for a dream
That's
journal.
awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. I like that.
I'm about, a good portion of the way through it. This one started in early 2019, but I have more than 20 years of dream journals going back. At this point, I should probably, and I will mark, occasionally I'll go through and I'll mark like a little tab, like I should probably revisit this. It's probably important. But I've got such a backlog at this.
Do you go back over the course of several years of the dream journals and look for themes or?
I have in the past done that, and it's really interesting to see, just where I was at, and particularly this last year, there's a lot of anxiety is coming through in a lot of the dreams, or this feeling of being displaced has come up quite a bit. And and people are like, oh, you're supposed to focus on this or that. I was like, yeah, this is my subconscious, man. This is what's just going on,
Right.
So I think it's really important. Here's the thing, you cannot gloss over your subconscious with dream work, because it's all subconscious. It's all there.
Right.
And so no matter what your persona that you're presenting to the world, where I'm living my best life, everything's love and light and everything, and I love everything and wonderful, I'm so grateful, glad for the people that are, but we've been through a collective trauma and a lot of personal traumas in the past year. Absolutely. So you may present that, you may even think that you think that, but if you can remember your dreams, I would ask that you compare what you're putting out to what you're dreaming about.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
And particularly, when you see something disturbing in a dream, or you see something that's like, what's that doing there? That doesn't seem right. That's a place to investigate. That's a place to call in, your helpers, if you have them, power animals, your guardians, your angels, whatever you think. And then if you don't journey, you can just sort of go into a relaxed daydreaming state, call in your helpers, like maybe just draw a door in front of you and walk back into that dream, like recreate the dream. And then when you get to the point where you're like, this isn't right, see what you can do, call in your helpers to do something. And that can be really powerful and really transformative.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of taking mental notes as we're having this conversation about,
And some
I can try.
clean up, sometimes it's not a dream. Sometimes it's you're actually in another external realm interacting with something, and it's not, and sometimes that's great, not great. I've had two people that I have met over years apart that had the same, I just got the internet was fuzzy there for a second, sorry.
That's all right.
But I had, two people didn't know each other, and I met them years apart. They had the same exact dream. And in this dream, they can't move. They're in the dark. There's a bunch of voices around them, and they're all whispering the worst things about themselves. All of these things, like no one will ever love you. You're powerful, you're worthless, you're not powerful, you're worthless, whatever, any sort of lie, negative thing about the person. And they can't move, and they're terrified, and they wake up and they're always exhausted from that. And I've seen this multiple times. And I was like, okay. So in the waking world, I went and I was like, we're going to go, I'm going to show you your power animal. So I, took them on their journey to find their power animal. I said, now, before you go to sleep tonight, call your power animal to you. They went in, they had the same dream, and they called their power animal while they're in the dream. Power animal like tore through whatever was around them and pulled them out of there, and they never had that dream again. Wow. Another person who was more working with deity forms, I said, can you speak? Can you invoke? I said, what's your deity? And then they told me, I was like, well, when you go to sleep tonight, if that happens, can you invoke your deity? They did. It came, brilliant light. And again, things just scattered. And that was the last time they ever had that dream. So.
Really, yeah, that's really interesting too. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah. And just that they could finally get some rest. That was very transformative for them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And I've had the whole same dream as somebody else. And this was before I knew that I was a medium, and, that went into a whole other, spiritual realm. There was some things going on in their home that we both kind of tapped into separately. It's interesting how the mind can connect with something like that. And when you started telling that story, that's where my mind started to go. It felt almost a little bit like present somehow. But
don't go there. That's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
That's particular realm I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, yuck.
So
but the part about the power animal is really, that's I'm curious to try that for myself for many different reasons.
Yeah.
That's really.
Yeah, you can ask your power animal, healing dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, on the subject, of transformative dreams that I've had concerning my power animal. I've had ones where I've been dismembered by an animal in a dream, which in shamanic stuff is considered a healing, is a big deal. It's supposed to be a good thing. Right. Now, for me, when I have those dreams, when this is what denotes them from just any dream, is like I actually will physically feel the pain of being dismembered while I'm in the dream. And then for like a split second when I wake up. So
sounds unpleasant.
It's not a pleasant thing. So one of the things I do to combat that is that every so many months, if I haven't had a dismemberment journey, I go and make sure I request one, because when I do that awake, I don't have that sort of physical feeling of pain.
Right.
Um,
So you're getting the benefits without all the cost, so to speak.
Right. And again, in that position, I've had where I saw like a series of dreams like that, where it was like I'm attacked by a jaguar, then I'm being chased by one, and then finally in the last dreams, I let it jump on top of me, and then I just didn't fight it. I didn't move, and it didn't attack.
Oh, interesting.
So I went through stages, where I was more aggressive to less aggressive, and just accepting, okay. And then when I did that, there was no tearing apart.
Right. And I mean, doing shamanic work in the waking world, that resistance and the discomfort that results when you are in a place of resistance to whatever healing is happening, it definitely mirrors that when you're able to just relax and no longer resist. It obviously makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, it's again, it's hard, and again, this is happening at a subconscious level. So even if you're conscious, yeah, let's do this, there's still that other level that's going on, and that's where we get into how useful dreams are. Does anybody have any dreams that they want like to talk about in the comment sections, or any dream symbols? Or
we've got, let's see, we have a couple more comments. Sandra was talking about missing flying dreams.
Yeah, I know.
Too, so I miss those. Yeah, those are awesome.
I went through a period of like this whole last year or so where I just didn't have any, and then within the last few months, last couple of weeks, I had more than I'd ever had in over a year's period of time. So it was like it came back, and it was. See, I had one last night where that involved flying.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Do you think we talked a little bit about the changing of the seasons and the shift in energy?
Yeah.
Do you notice?
That I definitely do. When there's a seasonal transition, yeah, my dreaming life picks up for sure.
Yeah. Lots of things, especially in the springtime, I feel myself start to shift in big ways, and I notice that on a bunch of different levels, including in some of the dreams when I can remember them that I have. Carla says, when I'm lucid, I let the dream play out unless it's a flying dream, and then I'm an active participant, and it's a lot of fun. She says she often, it's amazing. She often dreams of banishing demons, and has also had several alien abduction attempts in her dreams. And then she says, I can feel gut intuition and smell in dreams too.
Ooh, smell. Now that's one I haven't really had much with. I've had occasionally I've had taste, where I've actually eaten something in a dream and tasted it, but that's really rare. It's mostly sight and sound, occasionally touch, like those dismemberment dreams.
A lot of touch happening.
Yeah, a lot of touch. This is not consensual. Wait.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
This is very uncomfortable. I remember the first time that happened, I thought I'd done something wrong. I went to one of my teachers. Oh no, that's a really great honor. I thought, wow, that's awesome. And I'm like, didn't feel awesome.
Yeah, I bet it did not feel awesome at all.
No, it was terrible.
Yeah. And the only thing I even come close to comparing with that is, everybody talks about the dreams, the one where you fall off the cliff, and then the big thing is that if you hit the bottom, you're dead in your dream. I can say with all sincerity, I have hit the bottom many, many times.
I've died in dreams, and then I'm just a ghost.
Yeah.
And then I've also had dreams where I've turned to something, and the dream itself, one of the characters in the dream will sit there and interpret the dream that I'm having for me.
Oh wow, that's wild.
And I remember waking up and writing it down. I was like, man, that's nice when they interpret it.
That always works for you.
That work. That doesn't always happen. Well, I have had a couple ones where I've been lucid, and I've asked questions, to dream characters and things, and that's really interesting too, because you can get some very interesting answers.
Yeah. When you're from that state of being aware that you are in a dream, and then being able to ask them from that place.
Yeah, because one, if you're not plugged in and talking to a spirit that has popped up in your dream that's visiting or something, that's cool too.
Mhm.
But if that's not it, it means you are communicating with a part of a deep self, which we don't get to do all that much, you
Right,
know.
right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd be curious to experience that as well. Um,
It's unfortunate that, like a lot of those things, you really have to get really good at being lucid, though.
yeah,
Some of the other things is like journeying back into a dream. It's not exactly the same, but you can still get a lot of insight. You can get a lot of power returned to you from that.
yeah. I'm very curious about that. And so we talked about before we took a break, and we're looking at the comments about, for people that aren't familiar with the shamanic journeying process or haven't learned how to do that, how is or steps they can take to start to even though they aren't journeying, still access that information. What's the best way to start that process, that deep dive?
So, for me, I see dreams and the dream realm, particularly in shamanic kind of the worldview. You have the three realms. You have the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. Now, the interesting thing about the dream realm is it could happen in any of those three. It kind of spans all of them in a way. Um, and it's also its own kind of realm as well.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's just keep that in mind. This is a place. This is, if you can kind of, even if it's not necessarily a place, think of it as a place, as a realm that touches many other realms. And for me, it touches other universes as well. So, in my workshop that I was working on before the pandemic hit, the quantum self, one of the things I talk about is multiple universes where you have multiple selves, multiple versions of you in these different parallel universes, each of one of those having their own spirit, um, and then all connected to the soul that generated you. And they can communicate or through the dream realm. So sometimes when you dream something, it's that seems somewhat like your life, but different. It might actually be happening to a different version of you, and that's that bleed over effect.
Right,
So these are things that I'm not. I will get around to answer your question, I swear. But this is I'm sort of setting the stage for that.
right.
So
I
kind
have
of,
a question about that, but we can.
yeah, we'll go into it. But with that, keeping that in mind, just for just having, it's a model.
Mhm.
You're having a model that you're going to go into this space. And that, for people who've done like workshops with me who maybe they haven't had the experience with journeying enough to, like, when I do rune work, I'm like, picture a door, and you're going to go through that door and you're going to be where you want to be. So you're going to be at the where the dream happened. You're going to be here. You're going to do this and decide that that door goes there. Before you go in that door, particularly if it's a disturbing dream, or even if it's not, call your helpers, call your spiritual support team around you or to you that you can, call, so that you have them there with you. So if you encounter something you don't understand, or if you encounter something that is disturbing or troubling to you, you have immediate help with you.
Right,
Um, and then just interact. And then when you come back, write it all down. It's still different than our waking state, so it may fade if you don't write it down.
right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I like that. It seems extremely accessible doing it that way with the door visualization.
Mhm.
I think that's something that everybody can do pretty easily, and then allow them. And even I would imagine, even if they aren't able, if they're removed enough from the dream, because for me sometimes it just takes a couple of minutes, and like I'm maybe still left with that emotional aftertaste, but the rest of it is gone. But I
Mhm.
think even just connecting with that emotional aftertaste in that kind of doorway space is probably a good way in.
Yeah.
Even just beginning a dialogue with that emotional bit that's still lingering can work as a way in.
Yeah, it's simple. I mean, it's one of those things that, when you go and you teach on different things, it's sort of like, you have to think, well, what sort of background do they have? What's accessible? Yeah, it would be cool if we did this all the same way, but if you can't do it this way, here's the other way to do it. It's just sort of like teaching Tai Chi and teaching yoga. You do adjustments, right? For you, this might be the move. For you, you might have to use a block or, kind of that or a bolster or something. And that's kind of what I think that, and sometimes I use the door for journeys, for just quick journeys to certain things. So the only difference is I'll call my power animal to me and like, okay, we're going through the door.
It's interesting in mediumship development. Often we talk about using the door as well as a way to connect to spirit.
Doors are really great because they have such symbolism on so many levels of the psyche. So you feel you're passing through the door, you're going to a new place. You're crossing you're entering this other space.
Right.
And that is something, and symbols are something that the subconscious really likes. Mm-hmm. It really speaks in symbols quite a bit. So yeah. I think that's really useful for that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And you were talking a moment ago about the bleed over from other dimensions, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Had this thing that has happened to me in dream space, I mean, my entire life, where I will be, talking with somebody that's in my day-to-day life, or just having a normal day-to-day conversation. And it's, as far as the energy that I feel from them when I'm having that conversation with them, it's like I say, it's my mother. It's definitely my mom, but she will look like somebody I've never seen before in my entire life. That happens a lot, and it's always been a bit of a mystery to me as to where that comes from. Because again, my mind has created this person that I've never seen before in very, very clear detail. And obviously that's something I deal with in the waking world too as a medium, but right. This seems to be different because it's
I think
somebody I know.
I think what's because I don't think there's one school of dreams, as it were. There's not one, people say, oh, it's everything in the dream is you. I'm like, well, sometimes that's the case. Right. Sometimes you are not in your body, right? You are someplace else. Mm-hmm. In which case, no, it's not you. You were you in the dream, but other stuff may not be you. And when I was younger, I was like, oh, dream dictionaries, they're not really that useful. Mm-hmm. Because they're usually way outdated. Right. And like I said, the best way for you to have a dream dictionary is for you to record your dreams and then notice trends. And then also see what was going on in my life at the time. What was I dealing with? Mm-hmm. And, put it out there. There's the idea that, hey, it's not always multidimensional bleed through either. Sometimes it's just going on with what's going on in you and in your head and what's been going on in your life. Sometimes it is encountering another being, a spirit of some type, or another entity that has telepathic abilities that just sort of, your wires got crossed, right? Sometimes it is dealing with memory, with past. Sometimes it's dealing with future memory. Right. Something that hasn't happened yet, but is reaching back towards you. So I think being open to it being many things rather than it's dreams are this is really helpful. I think it's really reductive to say everything. Freud said it best. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Right.
Yeah.
I've
had people try and tell me oh no, this is very significant because of this, and I was like, I dreamt that because I fell asleep watching that movie.
Right.
But they don't want to hear that. They just, it's like, again, sometimes it's just a dream, right? Sometimes it's just your mind going through some things and reorganizing some data that you have. Sometimes
the energy that was left over in those synapses
of the day. Sometimes
yeah.
it is that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more. It can become more the more we work with it. But you don't want every dream to be deeply symbolic and meaningful either.
Yeah.
Just like you don't want every dream to be lucid either, because then you're like, you feel like you're living two lives, like our friend in the comments section said.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to, as it were, to get rest. But it's nice to have that. Again, it would be nice to be turn on and turn off. It's like, I just want a restful dream tonight, or I would really like to connect with some deeper energy or mysticism or meaning in my dream.
Right.
And some people are really, the way their minds are set up, are really easy for them to do that. Other people, it takes a lot more work.
Yeah.
It just depends.
I think it's probably very similar to working with intention in the waking world, which is something that we have to build and get used to and develop a methodology that works for ourselves in order for it to really have an impact. So I would imagine in the waking state, I should say in the dream state, it's very similar. That around dreams can be powerful, but you gotta work up to that perhaps.
Yeah, but even if you're just doing it more like me, which is more of a passive way where I'm responding to the dreams or looking at them going, my reactions are a little bit different now when in my dream life. That must mean something has shifted in me. Even just something small like that can be very useful for you. It can point you to areas where you need to grow, where you have grown, stuff to look for, stuff to ask for. I think, it's a tool. It can be like a mirror for us to see ourselves more clearly and to see where we're going, how we're feeling about everything that's going on, is very useful because, we've been trained a lot to lie about ourselves.
Right.
And about how things are. How are you today? I'm fine. How are you? I'm okay.
Right.
It's just a response. How are you? I'm all right.
Yeah. That knee jerk. Yeah.
It's a knee jerk that nobody wants to hear your troubles. Shut up. You're fine. Your dreams don't work like that.
Yeah. They're going to tell you what's real.
Yeah.
Tell you
they'll at least tell you what you think is real and what you think is important and what's eating you. Yeah. Sometimes literally what's eating you.
Yeah. And I'm curious, this is something that, we've talked about, that I've talked about with other folks in Soulfire recently is, trauma work. We did a conversation a couple weeks ago about plant medicine and trauma and journeying that way. I'm very curious about, potentially using dreams as a portal to work trauma out. And that may be a conversation for another time, but
it might be. Yeah, I would say that it's good to have support with that, or have really good working relationship with your guides or helpers or something so that there's gonna be somebody there,
Right.
When you go into something, because it's just because it happens, and again, your brain doesn't know any different. If it happens to you and it had an emotional impact, it's treated the same as whether it happened in your real life.
Right.
Or I should say your waking life rather than real. Because relative realities it gets, the deeper you dive, the weirder it gets. And, like I said, I had a flying dream last night. It was also mixed in with some other stuff, some dynamics that I was not happy with. And I was looking at how I react. I was like, I don't like that exactly. It was like, but at the same time, it involved this one man, and he was keeping this woman there that didn't want to be there. And I was like, I did what I thought I needed to do to help but I didn't like doing that. You know, it was just like, it
Yeah.
was kind of, it was like, it didn't feel good, but it was like it's saying, yeah, this can't go on, you know.
Right.
That, you know, you've got those different levels. And so, you know, if you look at it, it's like, well, what's that going, you know, what's that going on with me? I was like, well, you could look at masculine and feminine energy within myself, how I'm relating to the cultural idea of masculine and feminine, toxic masculinity, be that. It could be, maybe I need to look at, you know, relationships between myself and parents, or, you know,
Right.
there, you know, or yin and yang. There's different ways to look at it. Again, it was last night's dream, so it's kind of close. I usually like to give it a few days
Right.
to go back into it. But there was all sorts of interesting things. So, you know, different levels of things. You have to look at things and go, But again, when something is, this wasn't like, I didn't wake up highly traumatized from this, and it wasn't touching on like a memory.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a little bit different. When you touch on those things, that's something almost you might want to even think working with on a counselor.
Right. Making sure that you've got a good support system in place.
Yeah, I mean, because there's, even when you do healing work and you do stuff that is alchemical and transformative, there's still there's still that adjustment. There's still that feeling of disorientation while you realign into whatever that next state is going to be.
Right.
And, you know, just a few days ago, I saw in the paper that, you know, people are experiencing higher levels of anxiety now that we're coming towards the end of this as they transition back and they're interacting, and that this is normal.
Yeah.
That we have these feelings and this anxiety as we go back into starting to get together in person again and all, and that it will fade over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. But, you know, anytime we do something or go through something, that we have to just give ourselves time. We have to give ourselves time and space to allow ourselves to unfold and to resettle.
Yeah. And I know for myself, I have a feeling that that's something that I will be dealing with in my as we get closer to going back to work and settling back into life as we have known it in the past, pre-pandemic life.
Yeah. And I think I think it will be different. I think, I don't think it's necessarily bad that this leaves a mark. It's just how we react to that mark.
Absolutely.
We can still, you know, be a little bit trepidation. Hey, maybe during flu season, we'll be a little bit more careful, right? For going forward, which, you know, great, you know, that can have a long-term benefit. We may be more appreciative of certain people. We may say, hey, you know what? I didn't really miss these people. I'm going to try my luck over here with these people.
Absolutely.
It could be any of those things. It might, you know, I had somebody saying, you know, oh, I've got all these friends, they're having these existential crises. They're picking up and moving here. And I'm like, is that an existential crisis? Or is that just them figuring out that where they were and where they were going was not where they wanted to be?
After having been held.
Have to be held in place. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, you know, dreams are short term, being held in a place.
Yes. Yeah.
Where we're not in control. We're never really I know this is not popular in the metaphysical, but we're really not in control. We're really not. I mean, sometimes we think that we are, and sometimes it looks like we are, but we're really not in control.
Yeah. In the grand scheme.
Skim things, no. I mean, just something can happen in a distant star that could drastically impact life on this planet.
Sure.
So we're here on grace, in a sense.
Yeah.
Some people may go deeper into escape mode, and put their feelings away. Some people may dive deeper. Some people will dive deeper into their spiritual practice. Some people will completely go away from their spiritual practice after this.
Right.
It just depends. And it's gonna leave a mark. And I think going forward, what we'll notice is, well, the younger generations are really gonna have the most effect. And people think that that's necessary. You know, people are like, oh, what about the children? I'm like, I don't think they're resilient,
Mhm.
but it's gonna affect how they see the world
Yeah,
and how and what they value.
absolutely. But I think too, they've been introduced to things like, self-care in a level that
Yeah.
I was ever introduced to. I didn't come in contact with that at that level until, I think, even for myself, until this happened.
Well, they have to develop a community mindset way before most people do
Right.
in this society, I should say.
Yeah.
I, like many people in my generation, I was like very sheltered. And then all of a sudden, 11 or 12, and they start, I start seeing events because, you know, start seeing things like environmental, and I'm like, why is this going on? And I'm just like, really, there's a world outside
Mhm.
what's going on in my house and in my family and in my school, and just that connection. Now we're seeing little kids know that there is a world going on outside there, and how what they're doing and how what other people are doing are affecting them. I'd be interested to see what their dream life is like.
No kidding. Yeah.
Uh,
Right. I mean, just the fact that they grew up with the internet their entire lives.
well, yeah, that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
That's almost like it's not exactly like a dream. It's another realm. It
Mhm.
is another astral realm in a
Yeah.
sense. The blogosphere,
Right.
the YouTube, you know, collective. I mean, there's so much consciousness energy pouring in. So, and I know that there's like dreams, but I mean, it's all dream. It's all dream in a sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, even like Soulfire, I think of it in my mind as a place now. I
mhm.
relate to it as kind of a place, even though it's really not. But it is something that it's kind of a place that we've co-created in our minds and
Yeah.
such.
Does anybody have any last thoughts or comments or questions that we can
Let's see.
look
We've got a
towards?
couple of folks here. Let's see. Sandra asks, does cannabis affect the dreams? Could that be why I don't remember my dreams? Is there anything I can do to help me remember?
I don't know because I haven't tried cannabis, so so
And
I can't speak on that.
I can say from personal experience that I do work with cannabis occasionally, but it doesn't matter. I very rarely. I struggle
Right.
to remember my dreams regardless. So
I would think it would depend on what your individual, chemistry and balance is.
yep.
Different substances affect different people in different. There is an herb that you can take, that you can get. Mugwort
Mhm.
is really good for dreams and visions. Now, really, you want something that is fresh and in season. Apparently, it's more potent that way.
Yeah.
Um, so I just recently learned that, and there was a particular vitamin, or oh my gosh, I wrote it down in my notes someplace the last time I went to the Monroe Institute, that there was a certain supplement that people were taking, to induce more vivid and lucid dreaming. And I can see if I can find that quickly. I will do so.
Yeah. I'm curious about that too.
I'd totally forgotten about that too until just this moment. So I'm like, maybe I should check into that. Um, what I might have to do is look through this. Oh, wait a minute. No. Found it.
Oh, awesome.
Galantamine,
Huh.
supplement for dreaming.
Interesting. How do you spell that?
I may have it misspelled in my journal, so don't quote me. It's GALANTAMINE.
Galantamine. Okay.
Apparently, argine is also good for vivid dreams. Freeform, or ornithine is another one. So a couple of the different enzymes that you can
Yeah.
take.
That's interesting.
Again, I'm not suggesting you take this. You probably talk to a healthcare practitioner, make sure it's safe for you to take these things in supplement form. But since they asked that, I was like, I remember somebody talking about that, and I should look that up and see how much it is. Try it out.
I'm curious about that myself. I'll have to take a look and see if I can find that. I'd be curious to give that a try. And mugwort is something, I mean, you can find that at Whole Foods. It's pretty easy. Now, fresh mugwort, you may struggle a little bit more to find.
Yeah, that's harder.
But other than that, it's pretty easy to get your hands on, and it works for a variety of different things. It's amazing. It's a versatile little plant. And then Carla asks, do you advocate for the inclusion of any sacred plants or plant-induced journeys to access greater understanding?
I've not that yet in my practice. It's something I've journeyed to ask this, and I've always been said, hold up, wait. You know, certain plants have said, absolutely not. Other plants have said, not right now.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
Yeah. We again just had a conversation. I had a conversation with Liz Foy here in Soulfire a week ago, 2 weeks ago, talking about plant medicine. And I think, it's great for gaining insight into a whole realm of things. And I can't imagine that it wouldn't offer deeper insight into dreams, but I've never worked with it specifically for the purpose of deeper understanding.
Right. I don't know how that, I mean, from my understanding and from people I've talked to, it's sort of like the plant spirit is in charge of the journey.
Yeah.
And so you might get it, but the plant might say, oh no, we're going to talk about this.
We're going someplace entirely different.
Right. So the benefit of learning to journey without that is that you can decide, hey, I'm going to go journey on this, and that's what you're going to go do. Right. So that's the plus benefit. Now the negative side of that is you might miss out on something that you didn't even know you needed, or the more conscious control you try to exert over where you're going in a journey, the more you're going to get filtered through your ego perceptions.
Right.
So you have to get that balance of being directed but also back enough to allow information to flow through as cleanly as possible. And that takes practice.
I was going to say, that's a muscle you have to build, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Over time. Yeah. But if you're looking for something very guided and to have control, I agree with you that I think, the non-plant medicine, the drum journey is definitely a better way to go.
Yeah, I've been more interested in plant medicine for heart opening stuff. I've read a lot of studies on psilocybin for that it helps people open their heart. It helps them to get less of that tunnel vision and become more open just in general. And I'm like, yeah, I probably could use that at some point in my life.
It's amazing. It's amazing for that. If you're looking for that kind of expansion, or, you're people that are working through trauma, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It was the one thing that helped me finally be able to access, be able to sit in my heart space, because I didn't realize how closed off I was, and this was several years ago. But that was the first thing that put me in touch with it was working with that kind of plant medicine.
Yeah, it's there, and there are more studies coming out just about the benefits of that. And so I always find it interesting. People are they're like, oh, you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, but not for the reason that you think, because they think I want to see the different funny visions. I'm like, I journey already. I see all sorts of weird stuff. Trust me. I have the dream journals going back decades. I've seen it. What I'm looking for is more of on a feeling level, as on a communion level. Yeah. And which you can also get in dreams. I mean, you can have beautiful things. I had one when I came back from my last 2 years ago from Heartlines at the Monroe Institute. Guess what they worked on? They worked on the heart and that feeling of the vibrational state in both the nervous system of unconditional love.
Right.
And I was in a dream and I was seeing different animals, wild animals, big wild animals. And I was like kind of edging, going, one of them looked like my power animal. And I was just like, because I didn't know I was dreaming, right? And I was just like, just because it's that doesn't mean it's yours. So just be careful. And it walked right by me and it just said, I love you, Thomas. And I woke up from that dream feeling like $1 million.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so there, I think, healing, alchemy, there's big words. They have so much going on with them.
Yeah.
And what is sometimes the most profound is also is just a very subtle shift in yourself. A subtle shift in how you see yourself, how you relate, how you take things in or don't take things in.
Yeah.
And I think some of those little things is like, I'm looking at, what is the one main thing that would make my life just 100% better? And it'd be how I look at myself and how I treat myself.
Yeah.
I think if you can work with your dreams, if you can work with plant medicine, I don't care what it is you need to work with really to get that to happen. That is going to be the tool that is going to be wonderful for you to get you to that place of self-acceptance. And I think, you can grow through challenge and by being challenged. But I think in my own personal life, I noticed I have grown the most when I felt loved and accepted.
Yep, me too.
So
I've done the challenging stuff, and like you said, it can be great, but the thing that has carried me farthest and helped me exponentially more has been working on connecting with myself and that self acceptance and love. It's kind of everything.
Yeah, it doesn't sound as sexy as some of the other stuff, but it really is. So it's like the base of the pillar. It holds everything else up.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that, I agree with you. It doesn't sound super sexy, but, having experienced some of that, it's so exciting, and it really has kind of, turned on the lights and, made everything a lot more sparkly than going the challenge route, success and building character the hard way. It's been so much more enriching and enlivening, tapping inwards into myself and learning to care for myself and yeah, that's been amazing. So I agree.
Yeah.
Checking back in one last time. Let's see. Carla mentioned DC Botanicals Online out of Colorado. So I assume that they probably have some of the supplements that you were talking about.
Oh.
And then Sandra said, thank you most kindly for this conversation, y'all. X's and O's and cheers. So awesome.
And we didn't know how it was going to go because we didn't plan anything.
No, it's been lovely.
It's free flow, just like a dream.
Absolutely. I love it. As always, thank you so much for
having me
here and spending your time and having this another phenomenal conversation. Again, y'all, if you're interested in connecting with Thomas, definitely check out the description. There's all of his links and info in there. And we will be back very soon with another exciting topic. Lots more great conversations coming at you very soon. So thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.